What's up? Welcome back to the Siris King Show. It's your host, Siris King. In this episode, I'm going to talk about African traditional religions, but from the aspect of why I think. Now, I'm going to say blacks in America, right? Um, some people might call it African Americans. Some people might call it FBA, foundational Black Americans, whatever, right? Or even, honestly, even if you're just like, I know you're just like you're a child of an immigrant, but you're born in America, and I'm saying America, but the same would apply to England as well. But I think this is more England, Canada, like the Anglosphere, But America is really what I'm focusing on because it's more prevalent here. When you basically when you're from here and then you decide to go to an African traditional religion, I think it's important. I think I've always said that I think connecting to one's roots is extremely important. But I do think, for instance, right, that you have this the science hoodoo, not voodoo hoodoo, right? That's straight up African American, right? Not that and not only is it that, it's also like almost underrated in a sense. It's root work, it's magic. It's not really bound by frames. You don't even have people who there's not as much gatekeeping in that, right? And it's yours. And a lot of people in America just look at it as weaker. And so then they just go in, decide to go to the other ATRs, which is nothing wrong with that. The problem is that your approach, this is not politics. This is ancestral, right? This is spiritual. And not only is it ancestral and spiritual, when you merge, I notice in America there's a lot of merging with the current, I guess you could say, racial consciousness. So when I say the current racial consciousness, we're saying Africa, right? But what does that even mean? You know, I mean, I grew up as a Pan African, right? I've been in, I have to count, but I've been to over 15 countries in Africa. I was gonna say 10 because I wasn't counting the North African countries, right? I'm talking about Sub-Saharan Africa, but if you count the North African countries, you're definitely talking about like 15, right? I mean, it could be more. I mean, I don't have time to count my top of my head, but I've been there a lot. I've been a good amount, right? Might be even on the continent, and then I mean, shit, Brazil, Bahia, been to Cuba. I'm from the islands, and a little bit of Venezuela. Been to both of those. And I'm talking about even the African parts in eastern Venezuela, right? All that shit, right? Colombia, right? Not just the mainstream parts, the parts where I'm like, where I want to go, where the African is at, right? Palenque and shit like that, right? So I've seen it from the diaspora. I lived in America. I lived in all four regions of America: East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, South. Right. So, and then black looking people. Like, the name Siris is kind of a short play on Melanesian name, right? And Melanesian being the Pacific Islands. So I've been to the Melanesian. So I've been to like what I like to call black adjacent places. Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, right? Places where they're not technically African, but they look like it, and so there's a camaraderie there, right? So I've been to all the African adjacent places. So I'm not coming at it as I haven't been initiated in any ATR. I do that. I do. There's several ATR. I'm an occultist, but there's several ATR practices I do, right? I incorporate in my work, and everyone is gonna have their own opinions on it, right? And so I'm gonna give mine, and we can say an opinion for sure. But you also have to look at how people operate when it comes to this, right? And when I say about how people operate when it comes to this, because I said they merge it with current racial, like current racial politics. So we're saying black, and then we're saying African, right? And then we're saying it like it's a catch-all, be-all phrase. So like how West Africa does shit is a lot different than how East Africa does shit. Right? Those are the two extremes. North Africa, it was more connected to the outside world, right? But you want to put that how they do is different too. But let's just say East. Let's just say for now Sub-Sahara. How we do in the East and they do in the West different, right? When you start to get to the Central Africa, the Congo region, and the South, it's different too, for sure. I mean, especially because the South, they can emerge in Central African practices. See, Central Africa and South Africa is rough because the two oldest tribes in the world, one's from South Africa, one's from Central Africa, Congo, the Pygmies in Congo, the Bushmen in South Africa, right? So the Bushmen and Pygmies are their own, they're not East or West, they're their own shit, older than both of them, right? A lot of people in the Americas who just saying the word Africa, blank, this is like as a blank statement, they would have to look up in a book to see what I'm talking about, right? To be honest, right? They because it's really, I'm talking about 4 different lineages right there: the West, the East, then specifically the indigenous Congo, indigenous South Africa, right? Because when you go to Bantu, the Bantu is kind of a merger of kind of some West African practices merging with Pygmy practices and then becoming its own thing, right? And then that Bantu exploded into South Africa, which would then merge with the additional Bushman practices, right, into something unique to even amongst the Bantus, right? South African, Angolan, Mozambique folks. Angolan, to some extent, it's a lot different than Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, et cetera, right? Gabon, right? So a lot of people under the diaspora don't know this. Or they've been to one African country. And even if they've been to one African country, they ain't plugged in. They ain't know no gangsters. They don't know anybody could just come to them and just tell them anything and shit. When I went to Nigeria, I was fully grounded in Ifa, period. So I was from different versions, right? There's some fucking practices that exist in Cuba that's forgotten in Nigeria, or even if it's not, it ain't common like that. And I know for a fact there's some practices in Brazil and Bahia that's forgotten in Angola. It's a fact, right? This is what it is. So when I go to a place like that, I'm not going on my knees. When you go on your knees and you got a lot of money, you can get somebody to take advantage of you, especially for this fact. I wouldn't say African Americans shouldn't do ATRs, but I definitely think they should look into hoodoo first. And I think they should also, because that's how I did it. I think they should also, hoodoo, I definitely incorporate hoodoo practices in my stuff, and I practice occultism in my stuff. So when you understand the occult, you could look at something, because the problem that comes in with, even when the ATR is done right, the ancestors pass it on. So sometimes some things will work and you don't know why it's working. So when you're doing something, you don't know why it's working, it cuts the magic in half. It cuts the spiritual power in half, or whatever you're doing, right? Your conscious mind and your subconscious mind have to align, right? And so this is how you know when people get triggered. There's people making money from initiating people. And I do think when you're more disconnected, you definitely should get initiated. I mean, there's no question. Like, this is not a video telling motherfuckers don't get initiated in that shit. Because when you're not connected to something, you probably should get initiated. You need that grounded structure, because African systems are traditionally very much stronger than a lot of other magical systems. To be honest, it's more raw, it's older. And I'm not saying that, see, sometimes people say this, and again, this is why this video is kind of rough, because sometimes people say this, they're like, oh, I want to go to the oldest, oh, I want to go to the strongest. I said it's stronger. Like, let's be honest, there's other systems, like, there's African secret societies that are more secret than white secret societies. The fact that you have so many people in America say we need black secret societies, that tells you African secret society, or even its counterparts in the diaspora, they exist in the diaspora. They're more secret than even white secret societies. You know Skull and Bones, what is the Oddfellows, Masons, Rosicrucians, you know their names. You don't know the names of black secret societies or African secret societies, which tells you it's more secretive. And even when you go to them secret societies, they ain't gonna say, no, like, that's why I said East Africa, West Africa. East Africans, Ethiopians, and Eritreans, they got their own Christian traditions that are legitimate. They got their own Jewish traditions that are legitimate. When you look up, you got people, see, and this is gonna be the problem that comes in. It's when it's mixed with politics. This is when the spirituality is mixed with politics, and it gets messy. It gets messy because Africa is the most diverse continent in the world. Our experiences from each other differ. And then when you add the diaspora to it, from Canada all the way down to Chile and everything in between, when you add that shit in, right? Makes it more complicated. Because if I'll be honest with you, I've been in Nigeria, been in Cuba, been in Brazil, right? The three hubs. I mean, Trinidad and Puerto Rico are hubs too, but people, say the three known hubs for ATRs, right? I see people who into ATR do Kumi practices, or even dudes in Atlanta IFA. They'll be like, oh, I just spoke to Nigerian, and I try to flash my knowledge of Shango and Oya. They're looking like I'm crazy. Like, we don't do that, right? And to be fair, they shouldn't be talking about all Nigerians either. I do think in the rural areas of Nigeria, you start to see the IFA strength again. In the cities is where you have a lot of colonized stuff, and then gas gets complicated because the traditional reaction. See, this is the crux of the problem. When you grow up with something, it'll be like gang banging, right? You go to LA and you gang bang. It's part of their culture. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's part of who they are. Even if they don't gang bang, they from a neighborhood. You from a neighborhood, right? You from Inglewood, people think blood. You from Long Beach, people think Crip. It's just the way it go. Right? It's just the way it goes when you from LA, right? So think of it like that. And then when other states start to import gangbanging, they have to focus on structure more because they don't know. It's not part of them. They have to learn that shit. And it just comes off different. It'll be the same thing. Like in Cuba, for instance, I'm not gonna lie, they don't play with initiation. You see that shit strong, right? When you start going to Brazil and Haiti, people get initiated so this council, people get initiated, but some don't. And some people who don't are more fair than the ones who get initiated because it's part of their culture. You see? So even the way the ATR forms and it goes to a new place, it changes. You go to Trinidad sometimes in their old Isha worship, they'll have some Hindu gods with in that. You're like, huh? It's half Hindu. Just like people merge Catholicism. So you got Santeria, you got full Catholicism, right? This is not deep. But it becomes deep if you ain't from it. It becomes deep even if you go to those places and you just a foreigner and you just and motherfucker tell you anything. Right? Nigerian could come and tell somebody, hey, we don't do that anymore. And you could believe it. They may not, yeah. The person who immigrates to America tends to have more money, tends to be probably more from the city, more educated. They most likely wouldn't. True. And if they do, they'll hide it. I get it. So then they say that to people who don't know any better. So that's the whole point of this. Africa's a big place. Like I said, Eastwood, so for the West Africa, Christianity didn't go well in West Africa. Islam went okay in Senegal, but a lot of other places didn't, right? And a lot of other places didn't. Senegal's all right, but a lot of other places didn't. East Africa, Islam and Christianity and Judaism, really. East Africa was more connected to the outside world, did better. Not saying they had problems. There was definitely African slaves in the Arab slave trade, but a lot of them tend to be from the Bantu regions. Right? Like I said, the Bantu folks in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, they're still ancestrally from Congo or from South Africa, right? They're Bantu, who now in East Africa. So that's going to be a little different than somebody from Eritrea, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia. It's a lot of shit to learn, and not just learning the book, experiencing it. Let alone when you come to the diaspora. You know how much times I hear people talking about some shit, and I'm like, yo, that's for your island. And then when you come to the diaspora, the ATR rules change drastically. Even when you start to, like the big homies, right? Brazil, Jamaica, with Obia, even though it's dying there. But Brazil, Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, for the first big four difference, right? I'll add Tobago because they have legitimate lineages that are different, right? So very unique compared to just like the other four. And so when I say Tobago, Trinidad. And so you got those five, and they all do stuff differently, right? And they all kind of more documented. They all kind of leaders in their own space without even knowing it, right? I know, like, when you in Barbados, even Jamaica, you in Barbados, Bahamas, Bermuda, instead of St. Lucia, you want to do ATR, Pacific IFA, you want to get initiated, Nigeria's too far, you go to Trinidad to get initiated. Now, when you're from that world, you know it. When you're not from it, you're not sure. Like IFA in Brazil, Wakandabole, right? And Kebanda, and they have so many different versions of it. Even IFA, even something as simple as that, right? When you see IFA, it could be a divination system. Now people call the whole system the Cheche system, right? They call the whole system that, right? But technically, it's connected to Odisha worship, but Odisha worship is lower than it. It's the big homie. So you could be, so Odisha worship in a lot of places is more common than going to Umila and the big homie and Ifa itself, right? So you start to go to the small islands, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Barbados, whatever Ifa they have, Guyana, right? And that's not an island, but Caribbean, right? Then you flip it, you go Colombia, Venezuela, especially because Ifa is getting very popular in Venezuela now. So Venezuela especially, but like Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, there's ATRs there, but it's not as structured, right? It's not as written about. And there's motherfuckers who are talented who are not initiated. So anybody knows, in Obia, right? There's no initiation Obia. Obia is one of the most favorite ATRs. There's no initiation Obia like that. I know that because that's the ATR I know best. You know what I mean? And again, this is not to say don't get initiated. This is to say more. You have to be very careful because in America is where they're the most disconnected from Africa. That's why in America there's so many people who say they're Native Americans, right? I'm talking about people of African descent. So many people who would focus on Egypt. Like, if you want to do pyramid shit, Sudan is older than Egypt. It has more pyramids than Egypt. Why we keep saying Egypt? Like, you go to Sudan, you go to, and there's a war, there's a lot of shit going on in Sudan, but as a Black American, you get crazy respect in Sudan. Crazy respect. Why we focus on Egypt? You see what I'm saying? You can say it's pride, but there has to be some kind of self-hate here. Are we not, is it not true that, Judaism, Hebrews, there's some African ties to that, for sure. That's what I was going to say. Even the Arabs, if you look it up, it says there's 21 Arab countries, right? Because Turkey and Iran are not technically Arab countries, right? And 4 of the 21, or 5 of the 21 is Sub-Sahara. Comoro Islands, Mauritania, the majority is still Sub-Saharan. Sudan, Somalia, I'm missing somebody. Did I say Comoro Islands? It's 5, but I said 4. It could be Dubajati. I think they're on the list, I'm not sure. Dubajati always gets me confused. Maybe there's them. But it's 5 out of 21. And that's not counting Kuwait, Yemen for sure. Let's say Yemen, Oman for sure. They definitely have Black populations. There are definitely populations there that have from Africa. No question. So a lot of Middle Eastern countries, there's still Black populations, let alone the 4 out of 21 that are straight Sub-Saharan that they consider, they may not be Arab culturally, but for whatever reason, they might be that politically. So it's not as easy just to say, throw away Judaism, throw away Islam, even throw away Christianity. It's not as easy, especially when you're saying Africa. Now, if you want to put in a country, then you can do that. If you from a country, right, of Mali, Guinea, whoever, even Nigeria, you say, hey, man, it causes more harm than good, then that's different. Cool. And I feel like most people talking about ATRs don't realize how vast Africa is. Vast, right? You have so many people who talk about the North Africans are not African or they're Arabs. I'm like, no, North Africans, the Egyptians are Coptic people, and what is it, the Berbers or the Amazigh and the Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. No, them dudes are African. Africa is the place of humanity, so it gave birth to every race. Even Caucasian African-looking people gave birth to every race. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean there wasn't Sub-Saharans in Egypt, but I don't get into that because so many of you guys focus on Egypt, and I'm more concerned with Congo. You see what I'm saying? I'm more concerned with Cameroon. I'm more concerned with Mozambique. I'm just saying. So, it's cool, but that's a different politics, right? And I guess that's the gang. That's the gang influencing me. I let people speak for their politics. So even this topic, I'm not telling anyone don't do it because it's not my topic. And if you fumbling into a Black American, I'm attentive to you. So you do you. I'm saying, for my advice, if you go to ATRs, get grounded in culture, get different experiences within different ATRs. So meaning, if you go to Nigeria, look at Ifa worship in different countries first. I don't even have to do first, but compare it, get grounded in it. And when you go there, you're not like a fucking fish out of water, or you don't have this innocent look that they know they can game you. And even if they don't game you, even if they're real, right? you have a better understanding and can learn faster. And you're gonna pay 15, 20 grand, make that 15, 20 grand worth it. You motherfuckers taking out second mortgages, blah, blah. You get initiated and you still the same person before. Don't get initiated, spend 30 grand and be the same dude or same chick. Or have to have a placebo effect where you gas yourself up that you feel so enlightened now. Is initiation important? Without question. If you go to systems like Palo, I don't think you have to initiate it. Palo's unique. Like I don't think you could wing Palo. You see what I'm saying? I don't think you could wing Palo. Like Palo's not, when you get initiated, it gives you a charge if it's done right. And because the Congo slaves, the Bantu slaves were here for longer than the West African slaves, to activate that energy, you need a charge. So this is not anti-initiation. This is more pro-common sense. So culture and spirituality are one. If you get a spirituality, even if you're connected to it, but not connected by blood, but not connected culture, like you live in another country, you're gonna make a little effort to go back and reconnect to that. Go back home, reconnect it. If you're African American and you go to Africa and that's home to you, you say you're gonna go back home, nothing wrong with that. But just make sure that you kind of have the influences from different parts of the sport a little bit. So when you go back home, if that's what you want to do, you know what you're doing. Siris King. Till next time, peace.